guys, I'm Titi.
And I'm Beck.
And we're what the kids call woke or whatever.
Yeah. Hey. I say it, I mean it, you mad. But I'm speaking facts though. I got her, she got me, she mine. Baby, we on our own. My princess, my queen, oh my God. She make me feel at home. My element, pocket, my bag. Baby, I'm in my zone. They woke or whatever. They woke or whatever. Woke or whatever. They woke or whatever. Woke or whatever. They woke or whatever. Woke or whatever. They woke or whatever.
Hey guys, I'm Titi.
And I'm Beck.
And we're what the kids call
woke or whatever. Ok, je vais introduire le sujet d'aujourd'hui qui est vraiment un sujet le fun.
First of all, est-ce que ça va? Allô?
Oui, ça va. Allô? Yo! J'ai tellement stressé. Ok, je vais introduire un sujet.
Ça fait longtemps que t'as enregistré.
Oui, ça fait longtemps. Je suis comme, let's go.
Ouais.
Comment ça va?
I'm good. I'm happy to be back recording. On est des ranceuses. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. On est des ranceuses, but I feel like they're used to it by now.
Ouais, c'est comme à this
point. Je vais même pas faire de
promesses. On va même pas faire de disclaimer.
Ouais, écoute. But it's gonna be better. Yo, je peux pas.
C'est ça.
Je vais pas mentir.
Ouais. We're just here. Enjoy it for now. Non, pour de vrai, on est... En tout cas,
on va essayer.
Vraiment fingers crossed,
On va essayer. Je peux vous promettre d'essayer. Je peux pas vous promettre que je vais le faire.
OK. Non, on peut commencer.
So, l'épisode d'aujourd'hui... C'est un épisode, je disais un épisode spécial, mais c'est un épisode qui n'est pas nécessairement un épisode que les gens auraient pensé qu'on ferait. On va parler de true crime, mais spécifiquement se poser la question si la façon dont on consomme le genre de true crime est éthique ou non. Puis les pour et les contre du genre en question. Évidemment, on va donner des définitions, c'est quoi le true crime, d'où ça vient et tout. Puis à partir de là, on va explorer le sujet sous différents angles. La monétisation du true crime, la désensibilisation que ça emmène chez les gens qui le consomment, les propagandes qui sont derrière le genre, tout ça. So, pour les gens qui aiment le true crime, hope you're gonna enjoy. Aussi, hope que ça va juste nous permettre tous, en tant que société, juste de se questionner. J'ai failli dire, je voulais vraiment être ensemble, moi, j'écoute pas ça, mais je me souviens, un tueur si proche, je me souviens que quand ça se donnait à la télé, j'étais comme, puis je suis là, j'ai comme, je vais écouter.
It's interesting.
Ouais. Canal D, là, dans le temps.
Mais toi, t'es pas trop quelqu'un qui check le true crime comme ça.
Non, parce que ça va... It doesn't fit my delusion of things. Je trouve que la vie est déjà assez difficile.
Ouais.
Fait que quand j'écoute quelque chose, c'est pour, happy, cheesy, fun. C'est pas... sur les meurtriers.
Non, je comprends. Moi, ever since I was a kid, I've just been a big true crime person. Comme un peu genre intense, là. Comment genre, I consume the fuck out of true crime.
Est-ce que tu connaissais les quiches, genre?
Je connais les kiss, je connais les kiss, je connais les freaking police officers, je connais les détectives, bitch, je connais tout. Je connais les années. Comme, c'est intense, genre, I'm a big true crime person, but in the last few months, il y a quelques événements qui m'ont fait remettre en question genre how much I love true crime and where that love comes from, because when you kind of dig deep, there's a lot of problematic ways that we consume true crime. So doing this research especially helped me self-reflect a lot. So this is not no shade to nobody that watches it, because clearly I watch it. But I've really tried, that was in my 2022 resolution, to not consume true crime like that. Parce que j'étais comme, c'est intense. Mais on va rentrer dans tout ça. So before we get into the deconstruction of the industry of true crime, the industry as it is today, we have to obviously start by defining what is true crime. So, according to Wikipedia, true crime is a nonfiction literary podcast and film genre in which the author examines a crime and details the actions of people associated with and affected by criminal events. The crimes most commonly include murder. About 40% focus on tales of serial killers. By the way, guys, trigger warning.
Ouais, c'est ça, trigger warning, ouais.
Yeah. Trigger warning, guys. Ouais, big time en passant.
Big time.
Ouais. Okay, so let's get into the history of true crime. So true crime actually goes back as early as the 16th century. So due to the development of criminal justice and also the printing press being a thing, there started to be like some prints that were available to only the very rich about the crimes that were occurring in the neighborhoods, where to look for, like, where to be safe and all of that, which murder is on the loose. So this information started to become accessible in the 16th century once printing press was accessible, but that was solely for the elites. As we all know, they always get first dibs on
First, and then us maybe.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, if you
The common folk.
So
Maybe.
that happened in the beginning of the 16th century. Then between the year 1550 and the 1700s, British authors started to produce pamphlets, crime pamphlets. So it would be about like short little 6 to 24 page pamphlets on the horrific murders that were happening in the area and all of that. So that became now more accessible to the general public. So not only the super, super rich had access to that. And at around 1850s, there was there was the Paris morgue exhibitions that became a thing, very, very popular in around 1850. So basically what happened is that in France, there were a lot of factory workers that would perish while on the job because they were working under unsafe circumstances. And because a lot of them were migrants, they didn't always like have documentation on them. So whenever they passed away, it was hard to identify them. So what people in Paris started to do was they would just place the bodies in the windows of the morgue and like open the curtains, and through the glass, it was accessible to everyone as if you're watching like a mannequin when you're shopping. So initially that was really done in order for people to identify their loved ones because, again, we had no way to identify them. And it was mainly just factory workers that were dying on the job. But it quickly became like a big sensation, and people just really enjoyed viewing the dead bodies. So then it slowly became kind of like an industry, and now it was not only the workers that perished, but it was just people that were victims of like gruesome murders. And then they started to just display in writing what the cause of death was, so then people could read that and then view the bodies. And it became an actual tourist attraction. People would travel all the way to Paris to the Paris morgue exhibitions, and it became very popular. It became incredibly popular, and probably one of the most notorious cases of the Paris exhibitions in the 1850s, in the 1800s, was the Enfant de la Rue du Verbois. So in August of 1886, there was a newspaper article that covered the death of Enfant de la Rue du Verbois. So that was a 4-year-old girl that was found dead with bruises on her hand. So everyone that had access to the newspaper saw that front page, read the article, and then saw that her body was being shown at the Paris exhibition. So everyone was dying of curiosity and went to see the body. And within a couple of days, about like 4 or 5 days, over 150,000 people had went to see the body of the 4-year-old little girl who was in a little dress, and they were seeing her through the glass. So it became a thing. You would read a case in the newspaper, and then you would run to the morgue to see what happened. A lot of people enjoyed playing detective. Also, in 1895, there was a newspaper article about an 18-month-old that was found in a river, and then a couple of days later, like a 3-year-old girl was found in the river, and then people started to think, oh, they could be siblings. Let's go look at the bodies, try to see if they look alike, like really like big time playing detective, which like when you go back into modern days, like we're still doing that. Like we still think we can crack a case and shit. Like we're still on that type of time. So that was in the 1800s. So then in the 19th century, penny dreadfuls started to become very, very popular. So essentially what a penny dreadful is described as a story published in weekly parts of up to 8 to 16 pages, each costing 1 penny. So the subject matter of these stories was typically sensational, focusing on the exploits of detectives, criminals, and supernatural entities. So obviously with the rise of capitalism and the industrialization, a lot of people started to really invest and put money into entertainment. Like it became a thing, and leisure and reading for leisure became a thing as well. So then started the popularity of true crime novels. And then the 1960s, the novel that really, really shaped how we view true crime even till this day was the true crime novel In Cold Blood by Truman Capote.
C'est Capote.
Capote?
En
Okay.
tout cas, Capote, je pense que
Yeah, so it was basically a book detailing the murder of a family in Kansas that happened in 1959. That really set the tone for true crime media as we know it today. Definitely that book. So that's kind of a brief history, and Becca's going to go into now modern days what true crime has become.
OK. Comme tu as dit, il y a cette obsession avec le morbide et les meurtres et la mort. C'est pas nouveau, c'est pas quelque chose qui a commencé en 2010 puis que on est une génération qui est bizarre, qui est vraiment intéressée à tout ce qui est comme meurtre et tout. C'est quelque chose que les gens ont toujours eu, comme être intéressés par la mort, comment quelqu'un est mort, est-ce que moi je peux crack a case. Puis c'est une obsession qu'on a encore aujourd'hui, puis qu'on peut voir juste avec la croissance vraiment, vraiment rapide du genre de true crime. Comme tu as dit, il y a deux pièces de médias qui sont associées à la grande rapidité de la croissance du true crime maintenant. C'est le livre que tu as dit, le In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, et aussi le podcast Serial, qui est sorti en 2014. Fait que dans le fond, ces deux pièces de médias-là, il y a le podcast Serial, c'est un podcast c'est un podcast d'investigation animé par Sarah Cohen, racontant l'histoire romanesque en plusieurs romanesque, wow, sur plusieurs épisodes. Ce que je veux dire dans le fond, c'est ils prenaient un case, c'est des journalistes qui racontent un case, puis c'est juste divisé en épisodes. C'est un spin-off de American Life, qui était une émission de radio, mais qui parlait pas juste de case, qui parlait vraiment des affaires anodines de tous les jours. Puis c'était une émission de radio. Puis le spin-off, c'est Serial, qui se spécialise dans les meurtres, les cases, puis qui est raconté en saison, comme en série. La première saison, on parle du meurtre d'un étudiant, Hamin Lee, un étudiant de 18 ans, de Baltimore qui a été tué. Ça, c'est la première saison. Fait que c'est comme en 12 épisodes. On explique le case, comment la famille a appris ça, la perspective des policiers. Ça, c'est la première saison. Et c'était tellement populaire que c'était un hit avant que ce soit sorti. Comme avant que ce soit annoncé, que ce soit officiellement disponible, les gens avaient déjà download les épisodes. Le podcast Serial a 300 millions de downloads, puis c'est sorti en 2014. Puis jusqu'à maintenant, c'est le top des downloads des podcasts.
Damn, for real?
Ouais, les gens étaient vraiment investis. Saison 2, il y a un autre... C'était un autre cas dans le fond, d'un soldat qui s'appelait Bowie Bergadi, qui a été enlevé, détenu pendant 5 ans par les talibans, puis après a été accusé de désertion. Puis il y a une troisième saison qui a débuté en 2010, puis qui explore le justice system. Fait que c'est toutes des cases qui sont, encore une fois, breakdown par épisode, qui sont racontés par des journalistes, comme une histoire, again, d'investigation. Si tu commences avec le premier épisode, le deuxième épisode, puis là, le journaliste raconte l'investigation, toi, tu penses que, est-ce que je peux résoudre le case, ou comme, qui a l'air suspect, ou comme, Puis c'était hebdomadaire, fait que c'est comme, chaque semaine, ça sort, puis tu sais, comme, OK, le case. Fait que c'est ça qui a vraiment rendu, ce podcast est définitivement un des pionniers du true crime quand on parle des années plus récentes. Aussi, pour revenir à In Cold Blood, In Cold Blood a été écrit par Truman Capote. Il est sorti en 1966, mais dans le fond, c'est sur un vrai meurtre. C'est le meurtre de la famille Clutter. 4 membres de la famille Clutter, qui était une famille vraiment comme normale, typique des fermiers. 4 membres, donc un fils, une fille, la mère et le père ont été tués in cold blood dans leur maison. Puis Truman a appris l'histoire avant que le case soit réglé. So, comme les gens connaissaient l'histoire, puis ils voulaient, pour en savoir plus, il a déménagé comme au Kansas, puis il a interviewé les gens de la ville, les autres membres de la famille, parce qu'il y a aussi 2 filles aînées de cette famille-là qui vivaient plus dans la maison familiale qui étaient parties pour interviewer les policiers et tout. Je pense qu'il a jusqu'à 8000 pages de notes sur ce qui s'est passé. Et finalement, ce case, c'est 2 ex-convicts qui étaient, dans le fond, qu'ils avaient appris que le fermier qui engageait des gens pour travailler sur sa ferme cachait un stack dans la maison. Ou ils avaient entendu qu'il cachait un stack dans la maison. Fait qu'ils sont allés dans la maison puis ils ne trouvaient pas le stack. And they killed the...
Shit.
Ouais, ils ont tué les 4
Mais who
membres.
cracked the case?
Hein?
Who cracked the case?
La police, mais 6 weeks, je pense que 6 semaines après d'avoir arrêté les 2 convicts, Hickok et Smith, je pense que 6 semaines après, ils les ont trouvés et ils ont été exécutés par... comment on appelle ça? Quand tu mets la corde, puis... ouais.
Hanging?
Yeah, by hanging.
Shit.
Ouais, by hanging. Les 2 ont été exécutés, puis le livre est sorti en 1966. Puis ça a été... C'est un livre de non-fiction. So, non-fiction, c'est inspiré d'une histoire vraie. Ça ne veut pas dire que tous les détails sont exactement ce qui s'est passé, mais il y a beaucoup de sensationnalisme dans le non-fiction. Puis le meurtre était détaillé, parce qu'il a aussi parlé aux convicts aussi.
Oh, fuck.
Fait que c'était vraiment détaillé de genre, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé, comment il a fait ça. Puis ce qui était vraiment... Tu sais, ce qui était au centre du livre aussi, c'est beaucoup la psychologie derrière les... dans le fond, les convicts de genre, pourquoi ils ont fait ça. Puis ça, c'est une particularité du true crime. Tu sais, oui, il y a une victime, mais la vraie question, c'est toujours, why would he do that? Genre, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé?
Yeah.
Are we all truly evil?
Ouais.
Ou comme, est-ce que c'est unpredictable? Est-ce qu'on peut prédire ce genre d'affaires-là? Moi, j'ai beaucoup d'amis qui disaient, oh, moi, j'écoute le true crime parce qu'on sait jamais, genre, comme pour se... tout prepare. Quand j'en suis j'étais comme, j'aime pas écouter ça parce que c'est comme un peu... Puis elle était comme, non, mais tu dois t'informer, tu dois savoir parce que si jamais...
That's crazy.
Tu peux te préparer assez, like, I don't know, un serial killer voudrait te catch dans le street. Je sais pas, mais tu sais, c'est vraiment comme ça que les gens pensent. C'est vraiment... Je pense que c'est ça qui fascine la psychologie la psychologie des tueurs, du tueur. Puis c'est ça qui est questionable. On sait. On va rentrer un peu là-dessus, mais ce que je veux... en parlant d'éthique, de ce que je veux parler, c'est la monétisation du genre de true crime. Fait que, dernièrement, dans les dernières années, il y a eu une grosse croissance du genre. Puis quand je dis genre true crime, les documentaires. Parce que ça aussi, c'est quelque chose qui influence beaucoup. Tu sais, le true crime, ça a toujours existé. Comme tu as dit, les gens de haute société lisaient dans le papier, genre, OK, cette personne était morte de cette telle manière. Mais le fait que maintenant, il y a des YouTube channels, il y a sur Netflix, sur toutes les streaming plateformes, il y a beaucoup de documentaires. C'est plus facile d'accès. Peut-être que les gens vont pas lire un livre, mais tu vas t'asseoir et écouter comme un documentaire par rapport à tes serial killers. Fait que c'est même des serial killers qui sont infamous, que les gens kind of know who they are. Ça change rien. Comme le monde va aller puis regarder, puis ça va spread encore plus dès qu'il y a comme un documentaire qui est fait. So, si on regarde par année, on remonte à 2017, environ 55 documentaires de true crime qui sont sortis dans l'année. En 2018, on passe à 74, 2019, 83, 2020, 93 et 2021, 158. Fait que 2020 à 2021, il y a presque comme le double de nombre de séries documentaires de true crime qui sont sorties. Puis, quand on revient à la, capitalisation du true crime, it makes a lot of money. Je vais juste donner une rapide définition de c'est quoi le capitalisme, parce que on dit sous le capitalisme, toute consommation est unethical, mais je vais juste expliquer qu'est-ce qui rend ça unethical. Je suis malade. My bad.
You good?
Not really.
T'as besoin d'eau?
J'ai besoin de jus. Yo, my bad, guys.
On est good?
Ouais, on est good.
OK.
Fait que ce qui rend le capitalisme unique comme sorte de système, c'est qu'il s'agit d'un système économique et politique dans lequel les commerces et industries de pays sont contrôlés par des propriétaires privés et à des fins lucratives. So, quand on parle de propriété privée, les gens pensent que propriété privée, c'est la même chose que bien personnel. C'est pas la même chose. C'est pour ça que quand... wow. C'est ça que quand je dis que je suis anticapitaliste, je suis comme, ah, ben, pourquoi t'as un phone? Ça n'a pas rapport. Ça n'a pas rapport.
Ouais.
Ah, t'es anticapitaliste, pourquoi t'as un MacBook? Ça n'a pas rapport. Quand on parle de propriété privée, on parle de quelque chose que tu owns dans le seul but de pouvoir faire de l'argent dessus. Fait que ça, la plupart le commun des mortels a des besoins, a des objets personnels. Le capitaliste, les gens qui font, tu sais, les corporations, les CEO et tout, ont des capitales, ont des choses possèdent des affaires qui sont là juste pour faire du profit. Puis quand on parle de true crime, les plus grosses corporations que, tu sais, qui that sell this to us, ça va être les streaming services, ça va être Netflix, ça va être HBO, ça va être Hulu. Et la raison pourquoi ils mettent ça à l'avant, c'est parce que ça leur donne un gros capital. Et ça, c'est en dépit de ce que la famille de la victime a. Ou c'est en dépit de ce que la famille de la victime comme veut. Puis, quand on parle de true crime, il y a beaucoup de gens qui se sont dit, mais c'est important parce qu'on apprend sur les victimes ou sur comment on fait honneur à la personne qui est morte et tout. Mais pour beaucoup de personnes, c'est un trauma qui revive à chaque fois qu'un piece de true crime est sorti. Même si eux, personnellement, ils ne le regardent pas. Le Jeffrey Dahmer, j'ai pas écouté un épisode et je savais quand même. Comme je savais quand même un peu l'histoire, je savais un peu ce qui se passait. Puis j'ai pas, encore une fois, j'ai pas regardé un épisode. Ça s'est suggéré sur mon feed, c'est suggéré en YouTube. Des gens qui commentaient sur la série et tout. Fait que c'est ça qui est icky, c'est on fait ça, on produit ça pour avoir un capital en dépit de whatever parce que ça fait beaucoup, beaucoup d'argent et c'est beaucoup, beaucoup en demande. Et nous, en tant que consommateurs, je vois pas les gens vraiment care, low-key, que la famille dit non, tu sais, on veut pas. Moi, dès que j'ai entendu ça, j'étais comme, OK, j'ai juste même pas regardé parce que ça me tente pas de genre. J'étais comme, non, là, c'est pas nécessaire. Mais les gens, en dépit d'eux, puis tu veux croire que comme c'est pour le bien, ou même il y a des gens qui se vendent que c'est pas assez morbide, this is really, really weird. Gens qui c'est comme, oh, ça aurait pu être plus sanglant, ça aurait pu être ci, ça. Fait que c'est vraiment, pour les corporations, tout est une question de genre, on peut capitaliser dessus, et nous, en tant que consommateurs, on n'a pas vraiment je trouve qu'on n'a pas vraiment la moralité d'être comme, peut-être que celui-là, j'ai pas regardé. Il y a aussi toute la culture d'influence qui va en arrière de ça. Comme que t'expliques un cas que t'expliques un case de meurtre, c'est une chose. Mais que tu l'expliques, puis là, après, au milieu, c'est comme, hey, I have my personal code door if you want to comme en plein milieu du genre si vous êtes
use
comme
code murder.
Ouais, use code murder for like 15% off. Comme c'est bizarre.
Ouais, c'est fucking weird.
C'est bizarre. Comme il y a pas de respect, c'est vu comme 100% de l'entertainment when c'était des vraies personnes, la famille est encore là, comme il y a encore des preuves de leur existence. Le meurtre, des fois, le meurtrier est encore en prison et tout, puis il y a quand même ce... Il y a pas vraiment ce focus sur est-ce que... comment on peut reformuler tout ça. Parce que je comprends l'argument de vouloir, savoir sur un case, puis honorer vraiment la mémoire de quelqu'un. Comme il y a des gens... Il y a des gens qui méritent... Il y a des gens qui méritent. Les victimes méritent d'avoir leur présence sur Terre, être honorées, puis savoir qu'est-ce qui s'est passé, puis qu'on fasse mieux en tant que société. Mais c'est jamais une question de faire mieux en tant que société ou même prévenir que ces affaires-là arrivent. C'est juste une curiosité un peu malsaine de genre, je veux comprendre la psychologie de... Et encore une fois, du côté de la corporation, c'est vraiment juste comme de faire de l'argent. Because, again, it makes a lot of money. Puis c'est ça. C'est pas mal ça.
Ouais. And when it comes to true crime, one of the reasons why we believe that the overconsumption of true crime, or just a lot of the true crime content that is out there, is quite exploitative, is because of the desensitization that viewers or listeners go through while consuming this content for the most part. So we're going to break that down. I'm going to break down what we're desensitized to, because we're desensitized to death. We're desensitized to the act of murder. We're desensitized to feeling empathy towards the victims and the victims' families, comme Becca dit. But before, let's break down what is desensitization. So according to the Encyclopedia of International Media and Communications, desensitization is the psychological impact of repeated exposure to something, causing that something to not hold as much weight or significance over time. Now, desensitization to violence, primarily from media sources, has caused reduced arousal and emotional disturbance while witnessing violence, as greater hesitancy to call in adults to intervene in a witnessed physical altercation, and as less sympathy for the victims of domestic abuse. So Beck talked about the rise of true crime content in the last few years. So from 2018 to 2021, there has been a rise of just documentaries that were available on streaming platforms. But it grew from about 63%, and most of it accounts for true crime content. So definitely we are seeing us consume true crime a lot more. And there's a lot of things that we get out of that. There's a lot of parts that true crime itches for us. And one of the things that true crime will itch is our morbid curiosity. So what is morbid curiosity? Morbid curiosity is defined as a fascination with grisly or gruesome matters, and that's according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary. So basically, morbid curiosity is this idea that you know that there's something that is dangerous or threatening or disgusting, and you kind of want to look away, but you can't. Like, you can't look away. That's what morbid curiosity is. The best example for morbid curiosity would be if you're walking or if you're driving and you see an accident, like a car accident, you will 9 times out of 10 slow down, see what's happening, see what's going on. And it's very rarely on some, could it be a loved one? But it's often like, what's tea? Like, what's going on? Like, what's going on? And it's, you don't want to do it, but you can't really help it. It's this morbid curiosity that you have. And true crime tickles that morbid curiosity itch really, really good. And that's why we're so into it. Like Beck said, it's very rarely coming from a place of spreading awareness or coming to the help of victims, but a lot of it is really for entertainment purposes. And we get a lot out of our morbid curiosity is satisfied a lot through our consumption of true crime. And there's a lot of things that we get out of it. So for a lot of people, whenever we do witness something gruesome or dangerous or scary, our body has a spike of adrenaline, and then we're going to release a lot of endorphins and dopamine. But when you're in this kind of state of alertness, it makes it hard to look away. But since there's no real threat, like let's say you're home and you're watching like a murder documentary, for a lot of people, they will have this release of adrenaline and endorphins and dopamine, but then it's immediately going to be replaced with a feeling of relief because you know that you're not actually in that situation. So it's kind of like a temporary high that a lot of people get of like, oh shit, oh, but I'm straight. and it goes really quick and we don't even realize it, but a lot of people get pleasure from that high, and people can compare it to like a roller coaster ride where like you're on the ride and you're terrified, but then it's so quick and then you're back at the base and now you're good again, and now your body is like, okay, yeah, I wasn't an actual threat, I'm okay now. But it's just that temporary high that a lot of people get from consuming true crime, knowing that this is scary. Oh my God, I'm scared, but wait, no, I'm actually good. And it's something that is pleasurable for a lot of people. And also, as twisted as it sounds, and obviously if you're a person that consumes a lot of true crime, some of this can be like, hell no, like I don't feel that, but you have to kind of step away and do a lot of like self-reflecting, because some of these definitely do apply to you. One of the things is a lot of people actually find comfort in seeing gruesome things happening to others because it soothes your anxiety of the uncertainty of like what could happen if that was me. Like, because a lot of times you will rarely be in situations where you're kidnapped or where your car crashes or this or that. So watching it unfold like from a distance actually for a lot of people soothes this anxiety caused by uncertainty, because you're able to see how the families are dealing with it, or you're able to see how witnesses cope with it. So without you realizing, you kind of have this feeling of comfort of knowing like, oh, okay, that's what happens then. Like that's the outcome then. So you kind of this anxiety linked to your uncertainty of what would happen to me is kind of soothed by watching other people go through it.
So, si j'ai compris, c'est tu te sens réconforté par le fait que tu vois qu'est-ce qui arrive dans ce cas-là, mais c'est pas toi qui le vis, c'est quelqu'un d'autre qui le vit. C'est juste comme, okay, ça,
good to know.
Ouais, c'est ça.
And it's like, okay, because a lot of us have this fear of the unknown, and it kind of helps us figure out.
I see.
Like, your fear of the unknown is kind of like, okay, I see, this is what's going to happen.
Comme ça, ce serait la façon dont l'investigation arriverait, puis nanana,
and you find
le processus que ma famille devrait passer.
And you find comfort in that. Yeah. And this is and the last point that, when it comes to your morbid curiosity being tickled with true crime, this is something that I had to like sit with and be like, shit, I think I go through that a little bit. First of all, when it comes to consumers of true crime, most of them are women, and most of the people that create true crime content are women. I'm going to pull up a stat here. According to one recent study, women make up 73% of the true crime podcast audience. 73%. Nice. And another study revealed that women wrote 70% of the reviews of true crime books on Amazon. And when given a choice between reading a book about true crime versus a book about war, 77% of women selected the book about true crime. So the audience for true crime is mainly women, and the ones creating that content is mainly women. And it's interesting because a lot of most of the victims of true crime are women. So it's like we have this fascination kind of hearing stories about other women being murdered. Because a good majority of these cases, and this is coming from someone that consumes true crime, like a lot of these cases are women. And it's when you think about it, it's like, why are we the main audience of seeing other women getting murdered? And according to research, a lot of times hearing about, like, let's say you hear about a woman went on a jog at 4 a.m. Like, she went on a late night jog at 4 a.m. and she was murdered. In the most twisted way possible. In the most twisted way possible, it kind of does give you this reassurance that it couldn't happen to you because you're safer than that.
Exactement.
Like, you wouldn't do that.
Comme, moi, je serais pas
I wouldn't do that.
Duh.
Because it is scary to be a woman, and we find comfort in like whatever we can, and true crime is one of the ways that we do that. And I had to sit with that when I was doing my research. I was like, hold on. And I do like it's not that I find joy obviously in seeing women being murdered, but it is true that sometimes I challenge myself and saying, oh, like I wouldn't go in an Uber without seeing the license plate. So like, okay, like, woof, we safe, you know what I mean? Like, we're good. Like, that could never happen to me. So a lot of the reasons why it's mostly women that consume content of women being murdered is subconsciously we're constantly trying to see if our actions would differ from those of the victims in order to find reassurance, to feel safer with ourselves.
Mais ça revient à ce que mon ami me disait. Like, oh, you should watch just to be safe. Comme, pour toi, tu fasses pas ça.
But it's like, why am I actually like using like a morbid situation of a woman being killed as like an example. I don't know, it's crazy. And like I feel like a lot of the reason why I consume content, and like obviously it's not that you open true crime and you're like, let's see the women getting killed, like but it's not that. But deep, if you take a moment to kind of like step away and self-reflect, a lot of it is rooted in that. And I had to sit with myself and be like, damn, like that's facts. C'est fou, là.
Non. Ça frôle le victim blaming.
Heavily. It's definitely.
Yeah.
Moi, je trouve que it is victim blaming. Like, okay, like you didn't do that right. Like, I would never. Like, I could. And it's like, okay, but.
Like, oh, girl, t'aurais pas
yeah,
dû.
you shouldn't have done that.
T'aurais pas dû.
Because I'll watch these videos and I'm like, ooh, sis, you shouldn't have went home with that Tinder date. But it's like.
Oh, damn, he's weird.
He's weird. Like, you should have peeped that. Yeah. We do that. We really do that. Because why else would the main consumers of women being murdered be women? Like, there has to be some underlying reasons for that. Now let's get into how respectful are we to the victims and the victims' families. So you kind of brushed on that a little bit. So how does our desensitization work when it comes to just empathy towards victims and victims' families? So as a clinical and forensic psychologist, Dr. April Alexander, associate professor in the Department of Health Sciences at UNC Charlotte, says that the growth of the true crime genre is a combination of the fascination that people have about criminal behavior and why it occurs, coupled with the ease of access to these stories online via social media and streaming services, like you mentioned earlier. However, she says it's important to remember that this is not just content that should be viewed for entertainment, but for retelling of real events and real victims. So, you mentioned how in the recent years, it's a lot of the ways that we consume true crime is solely on an entertainment level. Get ready with me.
Wow. Yo, les make-up, puis là, c'est un fucking murder en arrière qui joue. Yeah.
Get ready with me. Wow. And then they're like putting the lashes on, talking about stabbings. I'm like, huh?
Mais des fois, tu sais, TikTok, c'est des sounds. Puis la fille, elle fait juste son make-up, puis c'est juste comme, I don't know, 1954, like, she got murdered. Puis là, elle est là, elle est comme,
But you know, honestly, I feel like this is where I started to question how I consume true crime, when I started to see like the rise of like the TikTok, because I never listened to like podcasts. It would always be like actual like true crime documentaries where it's like the in 1970, like those kind of vibes. And once I started to see, like, I'm scrolling on TikTok and it's like, let's talk about the murder of, then I'm like, hold on. And then that's when I started to really question, like, how I consume that content, because it became so gimmicky. And then I was like, this is kind of scary. Let me kind of reflect and see, like, what do I get out of this for real?
C'était vraiment comme, she got murdered by her best friend. Here's the tea.
Bitch, mukbangs. Non,
c'est vraiment enragé. C'est actually
enragé. Mukbangs. You turn up your freaking seafood boil, telling me about Shawty getting strangled. Like, that's insane. Makeup tutorials, all of that. But what's crazy is that we consume it while chilling too. Bro, moi je prends, I get my little snacks, Uber Eats, comme je suis là, have my blankie, let's go, comme je te jure. I would consume that like this is like a treat. Like after a long day, let's
relax now.
Let's relax. But you see that, you see memes like serial documentaries and chill. Like, I just want to cuddle with Bae and watch murder document. Like, these tweets always go viral.
Ouais.
Like, it's a thing. Like, it's fun, you know?
Puis le fait que le genre a explosé en 2020, while we were all inside. Pour le vrai, on était toutes comme,
yo,
let's
bundled
watch.
up, bro.
Parce qu'il disait entre janvier 2018 et mars 2021, les documentaires ont augmenté de 63%. Mais là, comme la création de documentaires sur true crime, mais la demande a augmenté de 142%.
No, that's insane. That's insane. Like, we are posted
Ouais.
up in the crib, cuddled up, watching that shit. Because bro, you know, one time I was really like, okay, am I psychotic? Like, I went, a few years ago, I went on a date. That's when I was like deep in my true crime bag. I went on a date, c'était vraiment comme, il y avait bien organisé ça, comme vieux port, outside, it was like dark, twinkly lights, all that shit. Puis that day, I had just binged watched so many true crime episodes, and like on est là comme, tu sais, bottle of wine, candlelit et tout, on mange. He's like, tell me about you. I'm like, oh my God, let me tell you about this murder. I was telling him about the story of this mom that had postpartum psychosis and killed her 5 children. And moi, je suis là, je dévore mon steak. Je suis comme, yo! And he was really like, what the fuck? And I was like, oh, he's not fun. Like, he's such a hater. Quand je lui pense maintenant, je suis comme, who the fuck comes to dinner with that type of like, c'est quoi, genre, c'est quoi ça? But that's literally like, we talk about the content creators and how they create the content for true crime, but we be posted up listening to that shit comfy. Like, this is like entertainment of the year. So there's even a podcast called My Favorite Murder.
Ouais.
Bro, je suis allée regarder sur le site leur description because I wanted to make sure, like, am I getting this right? I didn't know about it because I don't listen to true crime podcasts. It's really just...
Mais il y en a vraiment beaucoup. J'ai vu Crime Junkie. There's a couple.
Bro, that's insane. Mais check leur description. Like, let's play a game called Count the Red Flags in this description. Parce que check, this is on their website, yo. My Favorite Murder is the hit true crime comedy podcast.
Comedy?
Yo, je savais même pas que that shit could be in the same sentence, bitch. Okay, true crime comedy podcast hosted by Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark. Since its inception in early 2016, the show has broken download record and sparked an enthusiastic, interactive murderino fan base who come out in droves for their sold-out worldwide tours. So they call their fans murderinos. Yeah. They go on sold-out tours. Doing what? Je comprends pas. Y'all strangling the audience, là? Je comprends pas. But the thing with that is that people are not equipped to talk about murder. This is just the reality of it. Like, anybody can just open a channel, open a TikTok page, and just talk about true crime, but we don't understand that there has to be, like, journalistic norms that are being followed when broadcasting death, and we don't care about that. Sometimes these girls be 16, je comprends pas. Like, not everyone is properly equipped to broadcast stories of death, especially when a lot of the times they pick and choose the information to put out to kind of push a certain narrative to make the story more interesting, to make it more juicy. And a lot of the time there is no inputs gathered from the families of the victim. Y'all just go ahead and you freestyle without consulting with the family they could tell you firsthand what's going on because they've actually lived it. It's actually their experiences. And what happens also is because it's so easily accessible, we have these like TikTok detectives. And this is also one of the reasons why I was like, this is a perfect example of why I was like, let me take a second look at how I'm consuming true crime. I don't know if you heard about the Idaho University killings. So basically in November of 2022, there was like college girls that went to the University of Idaho. Not all college girls, there was one guy as well. They all stayed in the house. One of the guys didn't actually stay there. He was just sleeping over because his girlfriend lived there. But 5 of the girls all lived there, like best friends with the guy. They were like a squad, like 6, like friends forever type shit. And there was, in the middle of the night, there was an intruder that came in and just killed everybody that was on the first floor. And I think that what they assume is that the killer didn't know that there were actually 2 girls in the basement. So they slept through the murders. Like, they weren't actually killed. But everyone that was on the main floor died. Like, they were killed, stabbed, I think. And that became like it became really popular, especially on TikTok. And TikTok content creators, TikTok detectives decided to kind of push the narrative that the 2 girls that were in the basement were involved. Where? Oh. And like, mind you, they just lost all their friends. And now they started to push this narrative, and then you would see, and I saw this unfold in real time, and I was like, hold on, where y'all getting this information from? And I was in the comments, everyone is like, yeah, it's weird. And then they're finding old TikToks of them together, and they're like, look at how she's looking at her, like she's hating. These poor girls had to like completely private their Instagrams, like disable comments et tout, because they were getting threats. And à la fin, c'est comme ça a été prouvé que comme sont innocents. Genre, you're grieving, you're probably going through like a survivor's remorse.
C'est tellement traumatisant.
Et là, on t'accuse parce que les gens veulent jouer le détective sur TikTok, genre.
Et les gens adorent faire ça.
Oui, and it's kind of scary. And I feel like it's this idea of like, it makes you feel good about yourself knowing that you're able to crack a case. It's like on some ego shit, but it's very, very like scary. It's very scary.
Mais c'est aussi, tu sais, l'audience de TikTok est vraiment, vraiment jeune. So, c'est le fait que c'est devenu assez populaire et que ça a été assez dédramatisé en un sens pour que comme you're 13, 14, 16, 17, puis que t'es juste comme, oh, let me crack a case.
Yeah.
Oh, ces filles-là, on joue pas aux clues. Comme,
Yeah,
it's
c'est
not
ça. Comme, this
clues.
is not Guess Who. Like, this is like some real shit. Like, je comprends pas. Comme... And what's sad about that is that we do not take into account the families of these victims, the loved ones of these victims. We are completely desensitized to any type of we don't have any type of empathy at all. And a lot of the times these families are pushed to the public eye without really their consent. And then on top of that, they're rarely consulted when y'all like getting clout off of their names. Their family members' deaths are exploited without their consent. And another ways that we become desensitized to these cases is because of how we romanticize these murderers. You brushed on it a little bit. Guys, it can be as simple as the way that we see like the titles of these cases. The most insane killer, whatever, like the world's most notorious serial killer, the silent killer, the handsome, like why are we talking like it's some movie title? Like this is real life. And what's crazy is that a lot of times these serial killers commit crimes because they want that notoriety, because they want to be like their names in everybody's households. So we're pushing that forward with these like weird ass titles, and again we focus on the life story of the killer. How did they grow up? What kind of environment did they go? Were they bullied? What did they grow up in foster care? It's like you'll consume this like you'll watch like a true crime documentary, and damn near half of it is breaking down the life story of the killer and then why they did what they did, as a way for us to almost empathize with them and not focus on the actual victim at hand. We sometimes barely know anything about the victim, but we know every single thing about the killer. So we see these things, these glorified representations of these criminals actually forces us to kind of separate the entertainment value from the reality of it, and we look at these killers as literal characters, like TV show characters. It's not real. It's not real. It's a plot. It's a movie. That's what it is. We don't view the killers as real people, and we don't view the victims as real people. They're all characters in this plot, and the way that we talk about them and the way that we broadcast these cases plays a big role in that. We have a major lack of empathy, lack of sympathy when we're talking about the way that we consume this content. Obviously, consuming true crime exposes the viewers to the sufferings of the victims, but the more that you consume this, like if that's all you consume, the less impactful the stories become. At the end of the day, you kind of become bored and you're like, what's the next story? What's the next story?
Yeah. Tu cherches l'histoire qui va te faire sortir again, like something.
But it's like, it's actual...
C'est genre, it's not that bad, genre ça c'était chill, j'ai pas eu de chills. Whatever, mais c'est comme, it's a real story.
And I know that's like, I think that's like the main thing that I have gotten out of consuming true crime a lot. I feel like I'm so desensitized to murder. Comme pour de vrai, c'est épeurant. Genre, I'm super desensitized to it. And it's kind of like this double-edged sword of like, in one part you want there to be awareness on these cases, like we want the message to be out, but at the same time, when we consume so much of these images, we kind of become underwhelmed when any type of like lesser form of violence happens. Like I feel like that's what happened to me. Like sometimes I'll hear, puis je te jure, like this is so fucked up, but like sometimes I'll hear like a person like, okay, they died, how did they die? They got shot. I'm like, okay,
ouais.
Like we're genre, come, you know what I mean? But like, I'm like, ugh, it's not, because I'm used to hearing stabbed 57 times and strangled and then put in the sea and then body decapitated. Like I've listened to that for like a decade, to the point where I can hear someone like, okay, they were hit one time and they died, and I'm like, okay. And that's gruesome, that's horrible, that's horrifying, but I genuinely I have trouble being like, oh my God. Like, I'll be like, it's sad, but it's not gonna pull those strings the same way that like a super gruesome case will. And that's when I started to be like, I cannot consume true crime like that because it's wild. Like, I'll be eating my cereal in the morning, hearing the most gruesome case, and I'm just like, in it, but then I hear something that's just a little bit less violent, and all of a sudden it's like I'm able to move past it. I'm able, even when it comes to viewing image, like death in itself, viewing images of death, because a lot of times when you watch these documentaries, they'll include pictures, they'll include crime scene photos, they'll include the blood and this and that. So what happens is that I'll see, like, let's say, okay, so all of the rappers that have been killed, like Nipsey, Takeoff, PNB Rock, I've seen all of the videos, not because I searched for it, but because it's like it popped up on my timeline. And I was able to genuinely feel sadness and be like, oh my God, this is so fucked up. But watching it itself didn't like shake me to the core.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I would see people being like, yo, I went to throw up. Like, I couldn't eat. I had the worst day after watching. I was like, I couldn't eat after knowing that they passed away. But watching it didn't do nothing to me, to be honest. And that's when I was like, okay, it really does desensitize us to really gruesome killings. And I do believe I could be reaching, but I do believe that true crime also plays a role in the ways that we interact with images of Black people dying at the hands of police brutality. I definitely feel like it plays a role. The way that we're able to just watch that and then share it and then post it in our stories, I feel like true crime does play a role in how we're able to see that and not feel that much, because we're kind of used to hearing it in the most gruesome ways possible. Even if you're not seeing it, the podcast will describe it in detail to the point where you don't even need to see an image.
C'est ça le but.
You know what I mean? Ouais. So all of that, because of the overconsumption, death and gruesome murders kind of doesn't become that deep. It just doesn't become that deep. It's not that deep.
Ça devrait vraiment juste, it's not that deep.
Like, it becomes the norm. And in older times, like we mentioned, true crime we can date it all the way back to like the 16th century. And although people were going to the Paris exhibitions, and although people were like getting the penny books and all of that, you were kind of still looked at sideways like, you a little sicko if you were on that type of time. Now, you're not. Like, if you consume true crime, you're not looked at as a little, like, weirdo. It's, like, the norm. And I feel like we're reaching a point, and I feel like the pandemic has definitely showed that we do not have any empathy as a society. But it's so the desensitization that happens through consuming true crime is something that we definitely need to take into consideration when we're over-consuming that.
Mais tu sais, je pense que c'est juste que ça, quand tu deviens désensibilisé à voir ou à entendre par rapport à un crime, un meurtre, whatever, c'est parce que tu as déshumanisé la personne. Because, like you said, it becomes a character. Puis quand on entend parler de like what people used to do, tu sais, t'as parlé de la morgue, mais tu sais, Black people, on parle de public lynching, on parle de, tu sais, like people in a picnic and just watching.
That's true, and it was looked at as entertainment.
It looks at entertainment, puis toi, tu regardes ça, t'es comme, comment ils faisaient ça, but we're doing the same. Puis les gens veulent toujours plus. Ça fait que c'est comme... Oh, je veux aller à... Il parlait de Jeffrey Dahmer. Les gens se déplacent pour aller dans les sites où il a actually comme causé, fait les meurtres et tout. Juste ici. Like, oh, je veux sentir ça. Like, ça nous prendrait pas beaucoup d'être juste comme I want to see it. Genre, je veux être là, je veux voir, je veux que ce soit je veux que ce soit refait, pas juste à la télé, like, en vrai. Like, on est là, parce que if you never feel anything, tu vas vouloir, genre, comme tu as dit, c'est quoi le next step? Well, listening to it, ça me fait plus rien. Le regarder à la télé, ça me fait plus rien. C'est quoi le next step?
C'est quoi le next step?
Vraiment aller checker.
Mais ça fait
si je dois aller, si je suis comme, je vais aller sur le site et voir, comme, like, how can I get that, like, justement, l'adrénaline que tu parlais, la dopamine, like, how can I get it? Genre, c'est pas loin de genre, I want to see in front of me people, like, being murdered.
I remember when Takeoff died, like, people were like, stop sharing the video. And then people are in the comments like, yo, send the link. See, where's the video? Where's the video? It's like, you can't help it. Like, you want to consume it. Like, you want to, and then you see it and it's not even, yo, c'est fou, là.
Non, 100%. 100%. So, l'autre affaire, qu'est-ce qui vient avec aussi le true crime? C'est qu'est-ce qu'on appelle propaganda. And propaganda, c'est legit, le mot cop and propaganda mis ensemble. C'est une forme de propagande. La propagande, c'est une forme de propagande utilisée pour décrire la représentation des policiers sous un jour positif, en masquant tous les traits négatifs du corps policier ou des officiers et tout. Puis, c'est souvent poussé par le biais des médias pour influencer l'opinion publique. Fait que c'est ça qu'on appelle propaganda. La propaganda est partout. Every chose qui est comme CSI, NCIS ou Criminal Minds, toutes les choses qui sont comme focus sur la police, qui nous font voir la police comme they are the good person and X, Y est the bad guy, nous influencent beaucoup sur notre perception de la police. Comme tu vas voir dans un show, la police va utiliser la violence, peut-être comme, il en avait besoin parce que le bad guy didn't want to talk. Fait que ça veut dire que dans la vraie vie, qu'on va voir la police utiliser la brutalité, même si c'est excessif, on va être comme, il doit y avoir une raison. Là, est-ce que les gens disent ça pour de vrai? Il doit y avoir une raison. Puis quand on parle de propaganda puis de true crime, des fois, tu vas vraiment suivre un shérif. Des fois, tu suis même un corps policier, puis c'est juste comme, how did we solve the case? Or how did we never solve the case? Puis que le serial killer could still be out there. Fait que c'est vraiment le besoin, c'est vraiment cette idée que on a besoin de la police, puis la police doit être là, puis que comme on a besoin de la police parce que ces genres d'affaires-là arrivent. Il y a des gens qui disent que true crime actually helped, comme ça m'a aidé à comprendre qu'il y a des trous dans le système de justice, mais n'importe quelle pièce de média qui renforce le fait ou qui pousse le fait qui est là pour nous faire peur un peu ou qui scares us, avantage la police. It's never gonna... ça va jamais les désavantager, là. Parce que si on voit qu'il y a encore des gens comme ça, et aussi, tu sais, quand on parle de la psychologie du meurtrier, il y a cette idée que il est peut-être foncièrement mauvais. Genre, si t'arrives pas à comprendre le pourquoi, même s'il y a le background de sa famille, même si on parle à tous ses amis, même si c'est comme, OK, c'est que good person, c'est comme, il avait un bon environnement, une bonne mère, le père était présent, il avait des amis et tout, and that still happened. Juste comme, maybe, on va tirer la conclusion que peut-être que human beings are just bad.
Yes.
So we need cops. So we need
yes,
like
we're
prison
inherently
system.
evil,
Ouais,
so we need
ça.
to be controlled.
L'idée de les essentialism, so que comme at our core, il y en a que comme il n'y a rien à faire. They have to go to prison, ils doivent se faire arrêter, etc., etc. Puis quand on parle de propaganda, il y a trois fonctions principales. La première était de nous faire paniquer puis de nous effrayer de toutes sortes de crimes qu'on appelle les index crimes, que je vais parler un peu plus tard. C'est des crimes spécifiques. La propaganda aussi restreint notre vision de qu'est-ce qui nous menace, dans le sens où, genre, je vais plus avoir peur de comme jogger comme justement à 4 heures du matin que du fait que l'air est pollué. Genre, ou que mon eau peut être polluée puis que je vais pas pouvoir boire pendant, tu sais, tant de jours. Ça, c'est pas... On va dire une corporation qui est responsable pour la pollution de l'eau, de l'air ou quoi que ce soit. Ça, on voit pas ça comme un crime. Ça juste comme, shit happens, damn. Mais c'est pas un crime, puis c'est pas quelque chose que, pour moi, me menace d'aucune manière. Mais... comme un serial killer, quelqu'un qui est là, out there, maybe that's gonna catch me kidnapper, whatever. Ça, c'est un crime imminent pour moi. C'est comme ça que, that's how we see crime. Puis c'est ça que, that's why propaganda, c'est ça l'utilité aussi, de genre, de vraiment de restreindre notre vision de c'est quoi un crime, puis c'est quoi, comme, la menace. Puis, le troisième but, c'est vraiment de suggérer que, des fois, encore une fois, la police, la prison, c'est le seul moyen d'arrêter ce genre de crime. Puis quand on parle de crime, on parle de index crime. Fait que ça, ce sont les crimes qui sont répertoriés. Ça, OK, index crime, selon le FBI, ce sont les crimes qui se font assez régulièrement puis qui sont assez répétés pour se faire répertorier. Fait qu'on les documente dans l'année. Like, tu vas voir qu'il y a tant de shootings, qu'il y a eu tant de meurtres. Fait qu'il y a comme une liste de index crime. Il y a le meurtre au premier degré, le meurtre au deuxième degré, homicide involontaire, vol qualifié, agression sexuelle armée, agression sexuelle grave, enlèvement, séquestration, voie de fait grave. Fait que toutes des affaires genre physiques, genre on te kidnappe, tu te fais meurtre, comme tu te fais agresser, etc. Les affaires que c'est ces crimes-là que le système de justice répertorient. Fait que c'est ceux-là qui calculent et c'est ça qu'on voit comme crime. Quand on dit crime is on the rise, on parle pas de, encore une fois, on parle pas de pollution, on parle même pas de bank scamming people. On parle vraiment de genre les meurtres, les shootings, les vols, avec tout ce qui nous fait avoir peur de l'autre. Tout ce qui nous fait être comme ah, ça pourrait être mon voisin ou comme t'es weird. Et qui nous, encore une fois, qui nous fait qu'on rentre dans la culture de I'm gonna call the police, genre, we should call the police, ou comme la police, c'est la solution. Puis dans les médias, tu sais, quand il y a des keywords que les gens qui vont utiliser, comme ils vont dire, oh, un shooting, officer involved in shootings. Et tout, officer involved in shooting. Officer, comme, OK, la police était là, et tout, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé, comment ça les a affectés. Fait qu'on est genre, OK, ils sont involved, they need more help. Qu'on entend aussi, comme j'ai dit, depuis que la pièce de médias nous fait avoir peur de quelque chose, nous donne genre, comme, nous fait penser qu'on a besoin de protection, on va être genre, on a besoin de la police, et c'est ça qui aide à booster leur budget. Comme le true crime general va jamais faire en sorte qu'on est comme, oh, je pense qu'on a besoin de moins de policiers. Oh, ils n'ont pas réussi à crack ce case. On n'a plus besoin de...
Yeah.
I can do it.
Yeah.
We only know.
I got it. With my
Clairement.
TikTok University knowledge.
Comme, ça va jamais arriver.
Jamais.
It's not a thing.
Yeah.
It's not a thing. Ça va vraiment être le contraire. C'est comme, oh shit. See, there's crazy people out there. We need the police.
Definitely.
Ça va toujours être cette... On va toujours avoir ce réflexe là, comme we need the police for this. Et surtout que, comme, encore une fois, les crimes, ce qu'on voit comme crime, ça a toujours rapport à qu'est-ce qui est la violence, les coups, les meurtres, etc. Et aussi, une autre affaire que la propagande voit, c'est on voit le crime comme un problème d'individu. And that's what true crime does. C'est this person a fait tant de meurtres ou a tué tant de personnes, etc., etc. Fait que c'est toujours l'individu, cette personne est insane ou quoi que ce soit. She needs to be behind bars. On voit jamais le true crime as like a systemic thing. Genre, qu'est-ce qui fait que ces personnes-là elles sont plus enclins à être meurtriers. Comme, why is it so many men? Why is it so many white men? Genre, dans quel système on vit qui fait que ces gens-là sentent que comme they can't go out there puis juste tuer les personnes. C'est toujours des femmes. On en a parlé du fait que les femmes le consomment le plus, puis les femmes sont... Dans le true crime, les femmes sont vues en tant que les premières victimes de ces meurtres-là. Puis il y a jamais ce qui... Nous, notre questionnement, ça va être comme, ah, elle a jog à 4h du matin.
Yeah.
She got it. Mais encore une fois, on questionne jamais le système qui fait en sorte que pourquoi les femmes sont autant en danger. Pourquoi il y a autant d'histoires de femmes qui se font tuer, que ce soit par des serial killers ou des... mais ça aussi, quand on parle de true crime, je pense qu'elle avait dit 40%, c'est on some serial killer. Mais il y a aussi le fait que la plupart du temps, si une femme se fait tuer, ça va être un proche. Encore une fois, le true crime feed that idea que comme un random person qui rentre dans une maison, qui les connaissait pas, qui les tue, et tout ça encore, ça enlève la partie systémique de like why men are like killing their partner. Yeah. Comme this is a true crime story. And also Titi va parler de la perfect victim, so je vais même pas rentrer là-dedans, mais comme une des personnes qui a le plus de chances de tuer quelqu'un and like get away with it, c'est un policier.
Facts.
C'est un police officer.
Facts.
C'est like, this is a true crime story.
Facts.
Tuer la personne, effacer les évidences,
Ben
everybody's
oui.
backing you up.
Ben oui.
Puis t'es chill, là. And you get away with it. And that's a true crime story. And it's murder. Like, les personnes se font tuer, les personnes se font agresser, and we know about it. Et on le perçoit pas comme ça.
Ouais.
On le voit pas comme ça. Like, true crime va jamais... Peut-être que, dans le pire des cas, un true crime peut faire passer la police en tant qu'incompétente, But pour de vrai, c'est tellement pas la narrative.
Very rare.
C'est pas la narrative qui est poussée comme ça. Là.
Rare. Non, for real.
Souvent, le policier est dans le interview. Il est comme, yeah, we spent like
Yeah,
years.
comme si genre, yo, dust your shoulders off, like, yo, on a dead.
Moi et mon équipe,
Yeah.
là, tout ça.
I've been a sergeant for this amount of years. Like, OK, il sort les credentials et tout. Ben oui, là.
Alors que, en plus, la plupart des cas, c'est like, les policiers don't even like
Do
resolve it.
much. Or,
They don't resolve it.
Oh, actually, yeah. Yeah.
Fait que c'est ça que that's what like c'est ça que le true crime, c'est une partie du true crime qui est comme un peu problématique, c'est le fait que comme it helps pushing propaganda, et quand on parle de et ça crée justement la peur chez le public, like fear mongering, vraiment comme semer la peur. Puis tu sais, quand on parle du fait que c'est sensationnalisme, genre les deux, la police et ce genre de contenu, ça les aide parce que le true crime a besoin justement d'être sensationnaliste pour que like people pay attention. Like, il faut que comme ça des gros titres, il faut que le meurtre soit de plus sordide et tout. Et plus il y a cette sensation-là, plus ça rend la police relevant. Plus ça nous fait penser que comme we need them ou que comme they have to be there. Fait que eux, ça... Yo, c'est bon pour... It's good. It's never gonna be bad. It just won't be bad.
Ever.
So c'est vraiment ça.
All right. So our last point will be the idea of the perfect victim that is often pushed through true crime stories. So so the perfect victim, there's a lot to unpack with that. There's a lot of different systems that we're going to kind of look through. I'm going to read a part of an article called The Enduring Pernicious Whiteness of True Crime, written by Elon Green. So he interviewed Wesley Laurie, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner and writer. And Laurie explains that most true crime focuses on white police officers and detectives, white victims, and white prosecutors working to avenge them at a presumed white audience. He believes, rightly, that this is effectively a judgment about what constitutes a sympathetic victim. So, Laurie talks about, in the article, he talks about Samuel Little. Do you know who Samuel Little is?
Ça me dit quelque chose.
Ouais.
Pas te mentir.
Moi,
Ouais, it does.
I didn't know who that was. Samuel Little is considered to be one of the most prolific serial killers, having in American history, with approximately 93 victims. Sit with that for a minute. 93 victims. I don't even know 93 people. 93 victims. Yet, not many people know about him. Me being a true crime junkie, I didn't even know who this guy was. Many people don't know about him. Even in the true crime world, not a lot of people know about him. And Laurie believes that is because the majority of his victims were black women. And he's a black serial killer as well. Which we don't hear that much of. And a lot of times people believe that that's because of racial neutrality, and that's why we shouldn't care that much about true crime, because they're not trying to paint the black man as an aggressor. But we're going to get into why this isn't the aha, we got it moment y'all think it is. But let's break down a little bit more about the perfect victim and how that is linked to race. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about now is based off of the essay, very good essay, about 40 pages, True Crime and Danger Narratives, Reflection on Stories of Violence, Race, and Injustice by Lindsay Webb. So True Crime, and the article is characterized by white creators focusing on white victims and white perpetrators. And the most common pairing that we will see is white male and white beautiful, able-bodied, skinny, middle-class woman. That is like the ultimate pairing that is seen in the majority of these true crime stories. So white male and then pretty thin, young, able-bodied white woman. So desirability politics plays a very, very big role in who gets to be covered in these TV shows. And you can just pay attention to the language in order to see what's good. Especially if you go to the documentaries. I think maybe with the podcast, maybe they're a bit more careful with the words that they use. But if you go true crime documentaries on YouTube, a lot of times it's going to be the same description when talking about the victim 9 times out of 10, she's gorgeous, and the
beautiful girl,
beautiful smile lit up the room. Everybody wanted to be her. Men wanted to sleep with her. Like, as the prettiest girl in school, not a troublemaker, track star, always like track or soccer, cheerleader, sweetheart, straight A student. And this is not to say that because she is this, that her murder is less important. Obviously not. It's just to kind of look at the common theme that we see when it comes to who is deemed quote unquote important enough to have a whole true crime series dedicated to them. It is going to be this group of women. Author Harold Schechter, who wrote the book Anthology of True Crime, which includes stories of true crime dating up into back to the 1600s till now. After his book was reviewed, they were able to see that a majority of the narratives were all white on white crime. White on white. Big quotation. White on white crime. And an analysis on the My Favorite Murder podcast that we talked a little bit about earlier was conducted, and about 2 out of 3 of the first 150 episodes were about white on white crime. So true crime, there are some true crime shows that focuses on Black people and people of color, but it's usually its own genre. It's usually its own show, its own podcast that's highlighting African-American stories or people of color, Black people. It's never going to be like a general true crime story, a true crime show that like actively highlights stories of Black people. Whenever you do see cases like stories of a lot of Black people having a true crime story, it's gonna be its own category, its own show. And a lot of times these podcasts or these shows that are focusing on crimes that Black people face, it's going to be referred to as a civil rights or a racial justice story. So it's not even going to be looked at as like true crime. It's like, goddamn, we gotta fight the power. even when fighting for our lives. Civil rights. I'd be damned, bitch. I'd be damned if you call my shit some civil rights. No, to say it's true crime like everybody else, if that's what it is, you know? But because True Crime's audience is mainly made up of white women, and the ones creating the content are mainly white women, they talk about crimes committed by white men. And a lot of women actually view true crime as being feminist for that reason, because it's women calling out men. It's women calling out men. It's women calling out men. But that kind of doesn't even like make sense, because when you think about it, it's like, even if we're calling out white men as like the killers, even while calling them out as killers, white men still end up being a hero in the story because of the police officer.
There's a white man savior somewhere in the...
It's like,
oh, man.
It's like, even, it's like comme t'as pas d'aide.
No, it's not all men situation.
C'est comme, you didn't eat that. You really didn't eat that, because at the end, there's still gonna be a white man that's a hero. So it's like, okay, feminist, okay, posé.
So ça. C'est un peu un reach.
Well, it's such a reach.
Elle s'est levée, puis elle a
like that.
It's a reach.
Je comprends pas. And oftentimes, we are under the impression that true crime is racially neutral because there's no villainizing of the Black man or villainizing of the Black woman. A lot of Black people feel like it's cool to consume true crime because for once,
on n'est pas involved.
We're not involved, and we're not talking about Black men this, Black men that, Black women this, Black women that, because we're focusing on crimes committed by white men and that affect white women. But these effects are still very harmful, even if we look at it through a race perspectives, because it creates, like Beck mentioned earlier, false ideas of crime rates, false ideas of crime risks, and false ideas of crime demographics. Like, and in the article, I'll just quote the author: people who regularly consume true crime narratives may believe that crime rates are higher than they actually are. They overestimate their personal risk of victimization and misjudge the frequency of violent crimes. So again, true crime will portray white women as the main victims of murder, when in reality, Black women are the largest group of women that are killed. Like, period. You know what I mean? But because the focus is on white women, we'll have this idea that they're the most endangered group when that is not the case. And even when we're looking outside of Black women, murder victimization rates for Black men is higher than the rates of men of all other ethnic groups. And it's even higher than the rates of murder of white women. Black men are murdered more than white women are. They are literally murdered more.
Mais c'est pour ça, tu vois, like, quand on dit que true crime doesn't... Ça critique pas aucun système, ça le perpétue, because it still see like the white woman as the one that has to be protected.
And if you're looking at like the numbers, they're not the most endangered group. No. And especially the group that we're focusing on, which is middle class white women. It's like, are you being serious right now? Like, are you actually being for real? Harvard graduate, family has a pony.
Middle class, able-bodied.
Comme, really?
Presque riche, to be honest.
Actually, c'est comme, OK, ça toi, genre, comme, and again, these are real stories, but it's not the majority. It's really not. But this is what true crime makes you believe. So, and then let's just if we just come out of even the Black community, more than 4 in 5 Native American women have experienced violence. More than 1 in 2 have experienced sexual violence. How many Indigenous women go missing, get murdered by police officers, and nothing, not a word? I have yet to see, I swear, I consume so much true crime. I cannot name you a story that covered an Indigenous woman. And then on top of that, queer people are disproportionately more prone to sexual and physical violence. If you add the intersections of race, Black trans women, we say this all the time, life expectancy of 35 years old. And it's not because they're dying of like natural causes. They're dying because they're being murdered. Black trans women are being murdered. Most do not make it to the age of 35. Name me one true crime show that talked about a Black trans woman. Like, est-ce qu'on peut en parler? Genre, est-ce qu'on peut vraiment en parler? So true crime failing to report the violence other groups face actually ignores the systemic failures of our society. So what's really important to understand, what I really need everyone to get out of this is that, yes, true crime does not push the fear of people of color, but it pushes forward a fear of crime, like you said earlier. And although it's not necessarily pointing the finger at Black men as being the ones that harm white women the most, we view white women as being the most endangered. And although true crime does not push forward violence towards people of color, it does, however, advocate for institutions that are violent towards people of color. So at the end of the day, this intense focus that we're putting on white women, this idea that this intense focus that we're putting on white women makes us want to take action. And that action involves putting all of our trust into institutions that then practice these harmful practices on people of color. So the focus that we put on white women in true crime is not them being racially neutral or not being racist towards Black people. This further pushes a system of fear, a system that puts all of its trust in institutions that are made to literally disproportionately target people of color. So c'est comme, on n'a pas win. On n'a actually pas win. Yeah. So, yeah, so the trust in police, the trust in the judicial system, the trust in prison, all of that is pushed because of the idea of the perfect victim. So the idea of the perfect victim is harmful and it pushes racist ideologies, actually.
And even when come to the case où the police kind of fell, I feel like ça advocate on some like for the citizen to be the police. Et ça, c'est pas mieux.
Oui.
So like we're policing each other. Il y a même pas besoin d'avoir comme un police officer there. C'est comme, moi, je vais régler le truc et tout. C'est comme t'as dit par rapport au case with the 2 girls that survived. Puis notre premier réflexe, c'est juste comme, well, maybe they are the murderers. Peut-être que c'est eux qui sont involved. Non. C'est comme, we police each other. Puis c'est genre, it's not better.
Yeah.
It really isn't. No.
Cool. At the end of the day, I feel like everything should be looked at through a critical lens. So am I saying like necessarily like all true crime, like ban it or whatever? Because at the end of the day, we do need these stories out. However, it's really important to look at, is what you're consuming done in an ethical way? One of the ways to see is, there's certain cues that you can get. First of all, is the family involved? Is the family do you know if the family gave consent? Do you know if the family is involved in these stories being pushed? you know, and say this idea of like going on tour and doing this and doing that when talking about people's murder, immediately you know next, like ça marche pas. If you're consuming something where you see that they're donating a majority of their earnings to the families of the victims, things like that, it's like, okay, it makes a little bit more sense. But for me, I think my best way of knowing if this is something that I actually want to see is nowadays is if I see that the families of the victims are actually involved in the
je pense que
that's like the best way.
Je pense que c'est le safest way pour de vrai. I think it's the safest way. Juste le fait que... Parce que quand je lisais les articles, sometimes the family would beg Netflix to not put out the show or like to remove the show. Puis c'est genre, it's still out there. Puis fait à chaque fois que les gens parlaient de Jeffrey Dahmer et tout, je suis comme, but like they're out here begging. Like ils font leur possible pour just be like, can you not watch the show? Can you not watch it? Puis ces genres de shows, l'affaire avec ça, c'est que ça prend pas beaucoup d'argent à produire. It's not like you have to like create a set, costume, make-up, It's a bunch of interviews. T'as des photos que tu récoltes, je sais pas, pour la police et tout, and that you show and it's good. So it's low cost and a lot of money, c'est que le profit est énorme. Fait que just, I think, comme t'as dit, vraiment focus on the family. Puis je comprends pas pourquoi it's not being pushed. Tu sais, on dit que... attends, je sais pas. Je vais même pas dire ce que je vais dire.
Quoi?
Parce que j'allais dire que, you know, the whole thing was que comme it's focused on white woman murder. Puis it's the white men doing it, blah, blah, blah. Puis ça renforce encore l'idée de comme white women being perfect victims et tout, needing protection from the world. Puis là, j'étais comme, maybe we need more diverse cases. Mais là, je suis comme, is it even a good idea d'avoir, like, diversity in that case? Parce que je suis comme, je sais pas si je veux...
In a way, like, a lot of the cases are so underreported, like, of non-white people. They're so underreported. But now the question is, how would we want this information to be broadcasted to us?
Ouais.
Like, that's the question. Because we do need that information out there. And especially, like, social media has helped bring awareness to a lot of cases, like Lauren Stanfield that was murdered after, like, a Bumble date. And, like, we're seeing that. And it's, like, it's really, like, Twitter, people on Twitter that were pushing that. And that's how you got to know their story. Or the woman that was killed on a trip to, like, Mexico with her friends. And they left her body there. And it's a Black woman. And it's, like, the news is not going to talk about that. But what is the ethical way to push forward that information without making it, like, entertainment?
Ouais, c'est ça.
That's
c'est une bonne question.
This is an open question. Wow! We always gotta leave it with a question. But anyways, let us know, guys. Like, honestly, parce que j'ai pas la réponse pour de vrai. I do feel like this information needs to be out there. But I'm just like, I feel like true crime is so tainted. Like, we'll have to, like, really, like, redo the whole system of true crime from scratch to, like, really, like, okay, how do we make this information ethically distributed? So I don't know. I do feel like we should know about these cases of people of color because the news is not going to talk about it. The police will not talk about it. The police will under-investigate. Like, they won't be on it like that. But how do we do that?
Mais...
Let us know, guys, in the comments. Yeah. So, you know.
Ouais. Non, c'est ça. By the way, on fait jamais de promotion. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Yeah,
do that. Like, comment, subscribe.
Like, comment, c'est ça.
Subscribe to follow us on Spotify. Leave a review on Apple.
Oui, c'est ça.
Do all that good stuff. Hey, check
it out.
Anywho, on that note, I'm TT.
And I'm Beg.
And we're what the kids call
Woke or whatever.
Hey guys, I'm TT.
And I'm Beg.
And we're what the kids call
Woke or whatever.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on the bell notification to not miss any new content.